I said last week, you remember, that we are in the midst of a three-section section in which Bunyan puts before us a number of individuals who come as warnings to us. We started, you remember, with ignorance a couple of sections back. He was called ignorance from conceit. He was the man ignorance from the city of conceit. And he thought that he knew better and didn't need to know much. He was ignorant of much of the Christian faith. And the reality is that Bunyan paints him as a warning to believers as they are walking this path, walking towards Christ, that they are not kept back by ignorance, but rather pursue the things of Christ, the deeper realities of maturity and understanding these things so that they are not easily dragged away into what is false. Which is followed then by a section on a man by the name of Flatterer. Again, he's called the Flatterer, but Flatterer. And he is one who comes and uses flattery to drag poor Christian and hopeful down the wrong path to a place where they are ensnared. And you remember that one who comes with a whip of cord, or cord of whip, whatever it's written, comes and chastises them, disciplines them because they have wandered away, and sets their feet back on the path where they're supposed to go. And so he gives them such a chastisement, as you see this section close, and then they go on their way. And they are told at the end of that section to take good heed to the other direction of the shepherds. Don't do it again where you stop listening to those that God has put over you as your shepherds. Remember, they were the shepherds that were in the Delectable Mountains. Remember? Okay. So we have two that are dangerous, a flatterer and a man of ignorance. But we come now to a third. And the title of the section, of course, is Atheist. Atheist. And we see almost immediately, in fact, just in the second paragraph that his name is identified. So Bunyan doesn't hide his name until deep into the section like he did in the previous one. He puts it fairly close to up front. So the section begins like this. Now, after a while, they, that is Christian and hopeful, who have just been chastised, perceived afar off one coming softly and alone all along the highway to meet them. So they see someone coming in their direction. Now, you'll notice he's going in the wrong direction. Okay? So immediately right off the bat, you see somebody coming towards them rather than going in the direction they're supposed to be going. Then said Christian to his fellow, then said Christian to hopeful, yonder is a man with his back toward Zion, and he's coming to meet us. All right, so they're perceiving him coming in this direction. All right, so Bunyan's painting you a picture again of Christian and hopeful being on the path, and they're walking in the direction they're supposed to be going, towards Zion, towards the direction that the shepherds told them to go. Now that the one who has chastised them has put them back on the road where they're supposed to be and sent them on the right path, now they perceive someone coming towards them who is going in the wrong direction. He's going in the wrong direction. Deb and I look at each other and laugh because there's an inside joke there. Hopeful says, I see him. Let us take heed to ourselves now, lest he should prove a flatterer also. All right, so they immediately got the point, right? All right, so let's be careful here that this one isn't just another flatterer that has come along. Let's be careful not to follow him. Let's just go ahead and get our guard up right away as he is coming in this direction. Now, that should be obvious. I mean, he's going in the wrong direction. So automatically, they should be suspicious of him. All right, so that's what hopeful is basically saying. Let's be suspicious of this man. So he drew nearer and nearer, and at last came up unto them. His name was Atheist, and he asked them whither they were going. Where are you going? We are going to the Mount Zion, said Christian. Then Atheist fell into a very great laughter. Okay. Now let's just pause here for a moment. As I have done numerous times over the course of our time in this little book, I have pointed out that sometimes the words that are used in it have meanings to us somewhat different than they would have had to Bunyan in his day. And sometimes you need to think about that historical reality when you're looking at something, because you might get the wrong impression from something if you don't really know the more archaic word that's being used in a particular location. Is there something going on out there? Oh, the lawnmower. Oh, okay. The lawnmower is a flatterer. Now, don't be entertained by the lawnmower. That is the most worthless lawnmower I've ever met. That thing does not cut grass. Nope. It just wanders around, and you look behind it, and there's no grass cut as it goes over it. So I don't know what in the world it's doing, but it ain't cutting grass. It will eventually make its way back over to the charger over there and charge up, and then it'll go around again. And eventually, sometime a couple of weeks from now, they'll have to show up with the real mower and mow the thing. So, a flatterer, see? Not actually what it's supposed to be. An object lesson. Also one that catches your attention instead of it being up here. Now, after that, which Bunyan could not possibly have anticipated in his day, let us consider this word atheist, okay? Now, the word atheist itself comes almost immediately from the Greek. The word theos is the word from which we get our word theist. So a theoist is one who is a God believer, or one who follows after God. The a prefix negates it. So in Greek, an a in front of a word would make it someone who is not such, okay? So an millennialist is one who believes in a millennial kingdom to come. An amillennialist is one who says there is no such kingdom to come, okay? See it? So that a prefix has actually been brought over to us even in the Western languages. So atheist then appears to be a word that is used to describe somebody who is not a theist, or someone who does not believe in God or in a God, all right? By the way, there's many kinds of theism in the world, all right? There's not just one kind of theism, many kinds of theism in the world. So an atheism isn't just, I don't believe in the creator God. There's lots of different ways to view that. The problem with this word, however, is, in a sense, in a modern way, we have a tendency to use it, I think, in a way that Bunyan might not have actually considered. Certainly, there's always been people who would argue that there is no God. All right. I mean, the Proverbs writer writes, the fool says in his heart, there is no God, right? Okay. So there's always been people who would argue there's a God. But we live in a particularly interesting time in human history. Notice I didn't say unique, I said interesting, because we have taken much of this to a different way, or in a different direction that much of human history has gone. We now live in what many now call a postmodern time. Modernity, that period of time starting after the Renaissance, the Industrial Revolution that brought forth much technology and advanced the cause of men in their prosperity, that age has passed, and we have moved now into a postmodern world that's very much dictated now by information rather than technology, or by manual labor. It's now more of esoteric kinds of things like information and data and so forth. We might be moving into the AI generation now, whatever that might mean. But in any case, we live in such a postmodern world. But it's not just postmodern, it's also post-Christian. What used to be in the West, particularly a Christianized or a deeply Christian influenced world, has now really been pushed to the side, such that we now live in an anti-Christian world. It used to be Christian, then it became post-Christian, and I would argue now it's become even anti-Christian, and pushing back against the forces that made Western civilization what they are. So we live in this, what many would think is a more rational time than Bunyan did, or intellectual time. But I would suggest to you, and I think there are many pundits who would agree with me, that we now live in a more irrational time, and dare I say even a less intellectual time than at any time in our history. In the sense that we in the West, and particularly here in America, it's also true in Europe, but particularly here in America, we have pushed as much religion out of our culture as we can. The idea is to get rid of the forces of religion and spirituality that have existed and have been intertwined with our culture for a very long time in order to establish a more, well, they would say, neutral world, one not governed by spirituality, religion, those kinds of things. And so we are living in this kind of almost anti-religious world, in a sense. I would say it's even anti-spiritual, although spiritual is such a broad term that there's a way of seeing it as spiritual, but in a different way. I'll point that out in a second. So we're living in sort of this anti-religious world. It's why you see this rise of those who now check the box, none of the above, when it comes to what is your religious affiliation, right? They check the nones. So we see that on the rise. I think our problem is in the 21st century, under that guise, as a post-Enlightenment people, our problem with the word atheist then is that we sort of assume that atheism is possible. It is possible to be an atheist. It's possible to walk around believing there is no God, to be absolutely convinced of it. I think many people would say, sure, there's such a thing as atheism because we live in a society in which we've pushed religion to the fringes as much as possible. And so now it is possible in the so-called neutral world that we live to walk around as one who doesn't believe that there is a deity of any kind at all. That would not have been true in Bunyan's day. In the 16th and 17th centuries, religion was still very much a central part of Western civilization. Everything was in terms of a religious undertone. I mean, education was built, even in these days, with the undertone of theology under it. In typical university, theology was considered the queen of the sciences, and the other disciplines, mathematics, geography, geometry, geology, etc., were all subsumed underneath a theistic understanding. So Bunyan probably would have been more inclined to see an atheist not as a person who argued that there is no God, but rather a person who would have attempted to push God into a different frame. We would say, sure, it's possible for a person to be a complete atheist entirely. They would not. Now, I think that's important as you understand the way the story flows. Okay? Let me buttress what I just said with a contra example to help you understand what I'm talking about. Human beings are and have been for thousands and thousands and thousands of years religious beings. Every civilization that's ever existed on this planet has been buttressed, undergirded by some sort of religious reality. Virtually every one. The Greeks had their pantheon of gods. The Romans had their pantheon of gods. All of those peoples that lived in Canaan in Abraham's day, they all had their gods. The Egyptians had their gods, right? Civilization after civilization after civilization has been built on the reality of men being religious creatures. Inherently. Built that way. We are considered, in fact, by many parts of this world to be rather odd, having pushed religion out of the public square and out of the very center of life. That wouldn't be true in any Muslim nation on this planet, would it? Religion is very much at the center of their lives. Sharia law is built entirely on the religious underpinnings. So we are, in essence, living in this little bubble that we've created here of sort of an anti-religious thinking. Thinking that we finally have created this world in which we don't need a God. We don't need a religious system anymore. We have pushed it away, and we have been able to do away with that. Thus, we are able to see the world, in other words, see the world the way we want to see it. In other words, we're able to agree with Nietzsche when he said, God is dead. And we have killed him. Okay? Now people are crying out and saying, yes, that's what's happened. That's what we have succeeded in doing. So we would look at so we would in our culture say that the atheist is that person who has pushed religion and God and deity and all those things out to the fringe, gotten rid of it, pushed it away. His life is no longer governed by a deity, by the divine. In Bunyan's day, that kind of thinking did not pervade the world. So when he's thinking of an atheist, he's thinking of something slightly different than we are. Now, let me put a big old fat parenthesis right here, okay? Because you're probably thinking to yourself, really? You know, our worldview as Christians, if we truly believe what the Bible says, we cannot escape the position, the assertion that men are indeed religious creatures, right? We cannot escape it. In the beginning, God, the very first words in the Bible. The fundamental reality of a Christian worldview is that there is a creator. Paul argues in Romans chapter 1 from an entirely presuppositional position in his day, by the way, which was deeply religious, argues that no man can truly believe that there is no God because he's made in the image of God. And therefore, at his very core, he possesses an automatic reaction to a deity. Now, Paul does admit, yes, the real problem with humanity in Romans 1, as he puts it, is that men are desperately trying to suppress that knowledge. And the reason they're doing so is because they want to be God. But nonetheless, they are not able to entirely accomplish that. That's, in fact, the foundation upon which the entirety of the book of Romans is built. Human beings know there is a God. They inherently know it. They may try to suppress it, and they may do so to their own peril, and then get swallowed up in the sin that God himself curses them with as they fall into deeper and deeper levels of depravity, which is why the gospel is such good news flowing out of that. But here's my parenthesis. We do not actually live in an irreligious day. In fact, I would say that American culture is probably more religious than it's ever been. And not because it's embracing Christianity or Islam, but because it's embracing another religion that has taken the place of all the others that have been displaced. And that is called secularism. Secularism is a religion in every sense of the word. When you look at a system to decide whether it's a religion, there are really several marks that you're looking for, but I would offer to you three that become the primary ones to determine whether something is a religion. Number one, does it have a creed, a set of beliefs? Number two, does it have a set of practices that are built inside that creed? And then thirdly, does it want to have effect outside of itself to the rest of the world? So I would say to you that secularism holds all three of those characteristics. Secularism is a religion because it's creedal. It very much has a set of beliefs. And the fundamental belief of secularism, which we might rename as godless Darwinianism, is that there is a God, and his name is me. There is a God, his name is me. I am God. I would argue that secularism is much more polytheistic than even Mormonism is. Mormonism, I don't know if you know, is the most polytheistic religion in the world because every single person is considered a god. So secularism is just like that. Everybody's a god. I am a god. And the basic creedal idea of secularism is that my personal happiness is paramount. Or, to say it in religious terms, I am to be worshipped. Bow before the deity. That is me. It has a creedal statement. It's functionally and fundamentally all about the happiness of the self. I mean, we live in the most therapeutic generation in history. Why? Because it's all about the self. Because it's all about me. It's not only creedal, but it's also sacramental. It has its rituals. It has those things that are expected to be done in order to worship the self? I could give you many examples. I'm going to pick just 3. Again, notice I love 3. All good preachers do, right? 1, 2, 3. One of the sacraments is abortion. I sacrifice my child to me as God. You have women actually out there now celebrating abortions. What are they really saying? I sacrifice my child so that I, me, the God who is me, could have and be worshiped. That's really what they're saying. The self, me, all about my happiness, what I get. It's all about me. Even my child must be sacrificed. You know, human sacrifice has been going on this planet for 5,000 years. We're still doing it. We've been doing it for centuries. We're still doing it. All we've done is we've wrapped it in plastic, like that steak at Walmart. That you walk up, you grab it, you stick it on the cart, you scan it, you forget that it comes from a cow. That's all we've done. We've just sanitized it, but it's the same thing. Homosexuality, the second sacrament. We actively now push people into that. We get to the point, we've gotten to the point now where you might think that virtually 3/4 of the American population is gay because it has to be promoted in every aspect. What is it? It's a radical sense of worshiping the self. And I would put pornography in the list as well. What is it? It is a ritual, a sacrament, which is for what? It's all about me. It's all about my personal happiness. This religion has its creed, and this religion has its sacrament, but this religion also has its proselytization. It proselytizes. What does that mean? It means join us. And let me tell you that while Islam might be a religion of violence, even though the word Islam means peace, but in reality, conversion in Islam is by the sword. Let me suggest to you that secularism is also a violent religion. You will join us or you will die. There's no doubt of it. What we are seeing is a rise in that kind of rhetoric and that kind of talk. I mean, they're not even hiding it anymore. They're not even hiding it. Join us or die. Secularism is a religion in every sense of the word. Therefore, the so-called atheist is in reality in our day an adherent of this religion in which his God is himself. He's no atheist. He's quite a theist, except his theos is himself. Now, that's always been true, of course, from the very beginning of time, right? I mean, the self has always been the primary God of humanity. Go all the way back to the garden to get that reality, right? But we've made an art of it. We have turned it into a civilization. We have turned it into a new religion. We have our shrines, and we have our sacraments, and we have our creedal statements, and we have our proselytizations, and we have all these things. And we've even managed to stick it fully into our government, such that it's now enforced from the highest levels down. Most of us in the church have fallen asleep over the last 100 years and not seen it rise. But here it is. It's all around us. Wake up. It's here. So in our day, we would talk about an atheist as somebody who doesn't believe in God. I think the better term would be the way that Bunyan looks at it, which is a person that knows there's a God, but is not willing to pursue him. The true God. Okay? That's where this story is going to go. The picture you're going to get painted in the short section that you see ahead of you here is of a man who goes looking for something, doesn't find it, and therefore assumes that what he was told is wrong. Okay? That's the picture. A man who goes looking for something, doesn't find it, and then because he doesn't find it, assumes that it's not there. Okay? So after Christian says we're going to Mount Zion, atheist falls into a great laughter. You can almost hear him do his best Vincent Price impression, right? I can't do Vincent Price, but you get it, right? And so one of the two of them, Christian or hopeful, says, "What is the meaning of your laughter? Why are you laughing?" And atheist says, "I laugh to see what ignorant persons you are, to take upon you so tedious a journey, and yet are like to have nothing but your travel for your pain." All right, now, did you catch the irony in that statement? Did you see the irony in it? The irony is that this man, atheist, calls them what? Ignorant. Now we go back a couple of sections to a man who was called ignorant, who truly was ignorant, who knew little. Atheist then comes along and says, well, you are ignorant. You don't know. You don't understand. Now, from atheist's perspective, of course, as he views the world, he thinks of them as ignorant because they think they know something. Again, his reasoning. They think they know something, but it's not actually true. I, atheist, do know what is true. And I know it because I've experienced something that they have not yet experienced. See? All right. So there's this irony, I think, that Bunyan writes into this to say, here's a man calling them ignorant when in reality he's talking about himself in a twisted sort of way. Okay? Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the most ignorant of them all, right? Now, again, they say to him, why, man? Do you think we will not be received? Okay, so Christian and hopeful are still under the assumption, are they not, that they're going to an actual place. And so their assumption is the way that atheist talks, that he's simply implying that when they get to their destination, that they will not be received at their destination for whatever reason. Okay, this guy is probably claiming we don't have what is necessary to get through the gate. So he responds to that. Atheist says, received? There is no such place as you dream of in all this world. So he corrects their misunderstanding by saying to them, listen, here's what I'm telling you. You will never find a place that you're going to look for. It doesn't exist. Now, you'll see the string of pearls that are being laid here, right? There is no such place, okay? Or you're not going to be received there because there is no such place. And the reason there's no such place is because I went looking for it. Now, we'll see that in a second. So there's a string here that's running through this. There are some conclusions that are being drawn that really don't deserve to be drawn, but nonetheless, there they are. There's no such place. So atheist is the person who has, as we see so far, gone looking because he's further ahead on the path, and he's come back in this direction, and now he unequivocally states there's no such place. He makes that assertion, doesn't he, in the course? And that's why Bunyan calls him atheist, because he's perceiving something not to be there. So he says there is no such place as you dream of in all this world. And their reply is, well, it's not in this world. It's in the world to come. Bunyan is saying through these men, look, the kingdom we're pursuing, this should have been obvious all the way along, is not a kingdom of this world. We've already encountered plenty of people in this world who are not a part of that kingdom. Have we not? We've already seen a number of people along the way who were not really a part of this kingdom that is to come. So here's how atheist responds to that. Now listen carefully to what he says. He says, when I was at home in mine own country, I heard as you now affirm. That's an amazing admission. I heard what you heard. I heard the same gospel you heard. I heard the same message you heard. From that hearing, I went out to see. That's also an admission, isn't it? That's an admission of I heard something that I actually believed and took up a journey to find it. Again, is that an atheist? As we would treat it in our world? No, it's a person who has believed something, went looking for it, but stopped short. of actually getting there. We'll get to that point. From that hearing, I went out to see, and have been seeking this city these 20 years, but find no more of it than I did the first day I sent out. He's gone on the journey for 20 years, but he's never gone all the way, even in that 20-year period of time. So he draws the conclusion then that there is and could be no such place, simply because of the time that he spent looking for it. Now, any first-year logic student will tell you that that's a fallacy, isn't it? Just because you search for something for 20 years and don't find it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. That's a fallacy. And at this point, Bunyan throws in a couple of references that are worthy of our attention. The first is Jeremiah chapter 17. Jeremiah is prophesying here over Judah. Notice the first verse of chapter 17. The sin of Judah is written with a pen of iron. So he's preaching to the southern kingdom, probably sometime after the exile of the first kingdom. I'd have to go back and look to verify that, but that might be my guess. In verse 14, he now prays and says, "Heal me, O Lord, and I shall be healed. Save me, and I shall be saved, for you are my praise. Behold, they say to me." Who are they? Would be those who are not interested in the healing of God. They say to me, those opposed to me, they say to me, quote, "Where is the word of the Lord? Let it come. I have not run away from being your shepherd, nor have I desired the day of sickness. You know what came out of my lips. It was before your face." What are they saying? Let me suggest to you that what Jeremiah says here is what you will hear often. If there really is a God, then show him to me. Prove it. Prove it. Now, of course, that always comes with the conditions, which are, prove it in the way that I say you must. Okay, it's never prove it in the sense of how God himself wishes to be proved. No, it's about prove it according to the standards that I have set. Listen, I won't believe that Jesus was raised from the dead unless I see videotape of him actually walking out of the tomb that morning. Right? I've heard people say that. You'll notice how old that quote is, given that they wanted videotape. But nonetheless. It's the ancient cry of a person who does not want to listen to God's way of doing things, but insists that it must be done his own. This is atheist's problem. He's not traveling this road on the basis of what it is that the Lord has said to do and to believe, but rather according to his own standards and methods. So Bunyan throws this quote in to give us a picture of who this atheist is. This is a man who's been wandering 20 years, but he hasn't been wandering in the way that he ought to go. It's almost as though he has made his way up the path by basically bouncing from one side of the path to the other. Boing, 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 boing. And he gets about so far and goes, you know what, this is a waste of time, turns around and goes back. He never got to the destination because he never tried. He set the standard for himself, which then goes to Ecclesiastes chapter 10. In Ecclesiastes chapter 10, verse 15, let me go back to verse 12. "The words of a wise man's mouth win him favor, but the lips of a fool consume him. The beginning of the words of his mouth is foolishness," that's the fool, "and the end of his talk is evil madness. A fool multiplies words, though no man knows what it is to be, and who can tell him what will be after him? The toil of a fool wearies him, for he does not know the way to the city." That's an interesting quotation. Fits perfectly with the allegory, doesn't it? Here's a man who doesn't know the way to the city. He thinks he does, but it's according to his own standards. He multiplies words. He can talk a good game, quote unquote, but he has no idea where he's going. So he's an atheist only in the sense that his understanding of God is minimal, not that his knowledge of the existence of God is missing, but rather his willingness to actually say, oh, so what you're telling me is I must find God on his terms, not mine. You see, I think Bunyan would have understood atheism in his day to be the kinds of people who would look at the Christian religion and say, okay, you have your way, I have mine. I'll get to God my way, you get to God your way. Look, you can look at Roman Catholicism and see that as Exhibit A. We're going to tell you how to get to God. And, verse 14 of Ecclesiastes 10 fits the Catholic Church perfectly. A fool multiplies words, though no man knows what it is to be. We don't know being without God. We don't understand the concept of existence without God. The backdrop behind our very ability to understand ourselves is the fact there's a creator behind us. If there is no creator behind us, if we are nothing more than evolved bits of flotsam over billions of years of time, then we have absolutely nothing behind us that gives us anything in which to push against to discover who we are. Which is why everybody's asking, why am I here? What is my purpose? Why do I exist? Because there's nothing there for them to go look into. Or so they think. Because they've decided what the wall needs to be painted to look like, rather than letting God paint the wall to see what it looks like, to find purpose, you see. So this man has been searching for something, but not in the way that the Lord would have him to go, but the way he thinks he ought to go. Or more specifically, he's an atheist because he won't listen to the theos. Now, to be quite honest with you, I think a better word that we would use in our day to describe atheist is an agnostic rather than an atheist. People ask me about my upbringing as a Catholic. What did you believe in those days? And I think the best way for me to describe my own spirituality at the time was that I was an agnostic. I was not an atheist. No, I believed that there was a God. But my problem was that I had no knowledge of who he was. The church couldn't tell me. They had no idea. They still don't. They had no idea who God truly is. And so I spent my formative years knowing that there's some sort of creator. I mean, I can testify to Romans chapter 1. Trust me. There is a God. But I don't know who he is, because this organization, this thing which is called the church, has never bothered to actually teach me who he is. They've never actually introduced me to him. He is some idea way out there that hopefully I can satisfy by going through the motions of doing this or that. I would suggest to you that's the vast majority of religion on this planet. Islam has exactly the same features. So atheist would probably be better known as an agnostic. I don't know how to get to the city. And I am not going to stop and ask for directions. An old wives' joke, right? Why did Moses wander for 40 years in the wilderness? Because he refused to stop and ask for direction. Ba-boom. Keep your day job. He doesn't want to know where it is. So he asserts that it doesn't exist. But that's a logical fallacy. Any first-year logic student can tell you, nope, you can't connect those two things. Just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean it isn't real. I've never been to China, but I believe it's there. I've never experienced being in China, but yet I'm about 99.9% sure it actually exists. Right? Same thing is true with our basic nature of God. In our very core, we know that there is a God. But our problem is, this man's problem, I should say, is that he is inclined to say, well, you know what, I just don't know how to get there, so I'm going to assert then that he doesn't exist. Which is why Christian and hopeful respond the way that they do. Notice this one line all by itself as a paragraph. We have both heard and believe that there is such a place to be found. Our response is to hear and to believe. The essence of the gospel is quite that. Hear it, believe it. And we're not just talking about a belief in the sense of, well, okay, it might exist, I certainly hope so. But a belief, in this case, is the kind of assertion that says, I have heard something, and at my very core, I believe it exists. I believe it's real. I believe it's substantive, you see. The essence of faith is to believe that. Even as the scriptures say, we walk not by sight, but by faith. We walk by faith in this world. We have, let me suggest to you that we actually have, as those who have been given this knowledge, we actually have a greater assurance and confirmation of that which exists than those who would attempt to prove it with evidence. So, atheist responds, had not I, when at home, believed, I had not come thus far to seek. Had not I, when at home, believed, I had not come thus far to seek. If I was at home and I didn't believe it, I wouldn't have come. So I did come. So he's admitting that he heard something that he believed. But finding none, and yet I should, had there been such a place to be found, for I have gone to seek it farther than you. Okay, so finding none. I mean, I haven't found it yet. I've wandered all over the place looking for it. I haven't stopped and asked for directions, but I'm sure that I have looked everywhere that you can look, and I haven't found it. See, the assertion. The assertion is just simply because I haven't seen it, that means it doesn't exist. I'm going back again. Okay, so I believed something to be true. I went looking for it. I didn't find it. Therefore, it's not true. I'm going back again and will seek to refresh myself with the things that I then cast away for hopes of that which I now see is not. And what he says basically is, I'm going back to put myself back into all of the things that I had to give up in order to go on this little journey. In other words, I would have been able to enjoy all the pleasures of the place that I came from for the last 20 years if I had not bothered to take this journey. Now, you could make an excellent argument here that Bunyan is actually painting the picture of an apostate, isn't he? Of someone who believed something, went forth, but never actually found it because he really wasn't looking for it. He certainly wasn't looking for it in the right places. So you could make a very good argument that he's using the word apostate. See the difference between how we use the word atheist and the way that he's using the word atheist? Someone who, by virtue of the times that he lives in, cannot escape the reality of religion and spirituality, which is all around him. And so he comes to hear this gospel and he sets out to seek it. He just doesn't find it. He's not really born again, clearly. Because if he was, he would be like Christian and hopeful. So then said Christian to hopeful, here's how we need to react to this fellow. Is it true which this man hath said? So Christian asks, turns to hopeful and says, do you think he may be right? Now, that's not necessarily a bad reaction. I mean, it shouldn't be his reaction. But hey, sometimes we ask questions like that, right? Are we sure? Hopeful's response is helpful. Take heed, he is one of the flatterers. So hopeful diagnosis is exactly who he is, and this is the reason why Bunyan's put him here. He is another one of those who is a dangerous individual. Watch out for what he says. Now, the most obvious evidence of that is the fact that he's going in the wrong direction. and the fact that he himself has said that he has not found the place that they're looking for. But Hopeful says, take heed, he's one of the flatterers. Remember what it hath cost us once already for our hearkening to such kind of fellows. Remember, we listened in the previous section to a guy who was also a flatterer, led us in the wrong direction. Now, he didn't do it by, trying to convince us to go that way. We just followed him because he seemed like the right kind of guy. Let's not fall into the trap. What? No Mount Zion? Did we not see from the delectable mountains the gate of the city? We actually have evidence of this. We stood on those delectable mountains when the shepherds pointed us in that direction and gave us their looking glass, and we looked through it and we could see the gate. Far off, yes, but we saw it. They showed it to us. And the whole point of that, as you remember, is the shepherds giving instructions to the people to tell them where it is and how to get there. Doesn't sound like Atheist actually ever stood on the mountains and looked and saw it, just wandered around on the path. Also, and I love this one. Are we not now to walk by faith? Is that not what we've been told? Trust in the one who has called you and sent you on this journey and has seen you through so many different things along the way? Are we not to walk by faith? Let us go on, said Hopeful. Here's the one I really love. That one I love, but this one I love even more. Let us go on lest the man with the whip come back again. Do we really want to disappoint the Lord again? No. He has sent us on this path. And we know who he was and is. So the last thing we want to do is get caught up in his clutches again. Cease to hear him. Stop listening to this atheist and let us believe to the saving of the soul. And there's a reference to Proverbs chapter 19, verse 27. Cease to hear instruction, my son, and you will stray from the words of knowledge. Now that sounds like exactly the reverse. It is. It's exactly the reverse. But it's making the same point. Don't listen to him. Pay attention to the instructions that you were giving. Stop listening to this ne'er-do-well and start listening to one who has actually told us the way that we ought to go. And then, of course, a reference to Hebrews 10, which should be very familiar to you if you're familiar at all with the book of Hebrews. In Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 39, it says, "But we are not of those who shrink back and are destroyed, but of those who have faith and preserve their souls." In fact, verses even before that, verse 36, "You have need of endurance, so that when you have done the will of God, you may receive what is promised. For yet a little while, and the coming one will come and will not delay. But my righteous one shall live by faith." Habakkuk 2:4, same thing quoted in Romans 1. "But my righteous one shall live by faith, and if he shrinks back, my soul has no pleasure in him." We walk this walk by faith. We trust what our God has shown us. And we actually possess, by virtue of having been born again by the Spirit of God, we possess an assurance much stronger than you could get if you had videotape. Our eyes can deceive us. But the Word of God, buried deep in our newly raised soul, cannot. It will not. We do not listen to this man who has wandered around looking for something, never found it, and thus now asserts it doesn't exist. Many in our society will tell you that. That's exactly the argument that they will use to dissuade you as a Christian. That's what Satan will tell you. His primary lie will be, unless you see it with your own eyes, you won't believe it. We are to believe and walk by faith. And the righteous shall live by their faith. So here we have three men, ignorance, flatterer, and atheist, let's put that in quotes, that try to dissuade Christian and Hopeful from their journey. They are stark reminders to us. Be aware. There are religious zealots all around you. Oh, they may claim to not hold to a religion. Oh, they do. And they want you to join theirs to the death of your soul.